The most terrifying torture chamber in history didn't have blood-stained walls or iron chains on the ceiling. It had marble floors, polished ledgers, and lawyers in official robes calmly taking notes while people's lives were quietly dismantled in the name of justice. This is the hidden world of judicial torture, where cruelty doesn't scream in the streets. It whispers from court documents, decrees, and sealed archives. When most people think of torture, they imagine dungeons, secret police, and dark basements. But the most dangerous version hides behind something far more respectable: the courtroom. In that world, a signature can do what a whip never could. Under Emperor Caligula, Rome witnessed exactly this: a legal system twisted into a weapon, where humiliation, sexual violence, and psychological destruction were all logged, coded, and stamped as if they were ordinary government business. Caligula's palace didn't operate like a chaotic den of madness. It functioned like an institution. The corridors echoed not with arguments over law, but with people begging for mercy, while scribes recorded their suffering like financial expenses. Every violation had a rate, every victim had a file, and every atrocity had an official procedure attached to it. The line between court and torture chamber dissolved so completely that Rome's elite barely realized when the law stopped protecting them and started consuming them. To understand how justice can mutate into a tool of terror, the story has to start earlier. Not with the monster Caligula became, but with the miracle Rome thought it was getting. Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, nicknamed Caligula for the miniature soldier boots he wore as a child, grew up adored by the legions as the son of the hugely popular General Germanicus. His rise to the throne felt like a blessing. Rome celebrated for around 100 days when he took power. Senators relaxed after the suffocating paranoia of Tiberius. The people genuinely believed a golden age had arrived. Early in his reign, Caligula did everything a good emperor was supposed to do. He lowered taxes, freed political prisoners, launched public games, repaired roads and aqueducts, and lavished honors on the army. Women scattered flowers in his path. Children sang songs about him. Senators pushed each other aside just to stand closer to him at ceremonies. It looked like stability, generosity, and even mercy had finally returned to Rome after years of fear. Then came the illness. In 37 CE, a mysterious sickness dragged the young emperor to the edge of death. Court physicians recorded fevers hotter than they thought survivable, convulsions so violent several men had to hold him down, and delirious episodes where he claimed he was speaking directly with Jupiter, the king of the gods. Priests sacrificed, citizens made vows to die in his place, and the empire held its breath. When he finally regained consciousness, it wasn't just his body that had changed. The first sign seemed almost theatrical. He ordered every statue of every god in Rome to have its head replaced with his own. But the real transformation went deeper. His once warm eyes turned predatory. He stopped sleeping, pacing through the palace at night, whispering to statues and talking to the moon, convinced unseen enemies surrounded him. Servants sometimes found him at dawn, naked and covered in dirt, claiming he had been planting Rome's destiny in the gardens. What he really planted was something else: the roots of a new kind of judicial horror, where the law itself became the torture device. It started at home. His sisters Drusilla, Julia Livilla, and Agrippina the Younger ceased to be just family. They became the first targets in a pattern: who complied, who hesitated, who tried to smile politely through the humiliation. Those notes became leverage. The senator whose wife seemed enthusiastic suddenly found himself voting automatically in favor of every imperial proposal. Another man who appeared reluctant discovered his young son returned to him mutilated, castrated as a warning. The message was simple: in this system, there was no neutral. You were either a tool or a victim, and often both. To make the brutality feel official, Caligula leaned heavily on procedure. A Roman physician, Lucius Scriber, later wrote about being forced to examine noblewomen and girls in front of the emperor, assessing their fertility and their capacity to withstand repeated use. This wasn't a private obsession anymore. It was a bureaucratic program. Rates were set, records were kept. 16 sesterces for a night with a senator's wife, 2,000 for his virgin daughter. 5,000 if he wanted both together. All public money, recorded as voluntary contributions to the imperial treasury. Imagine walking into a courtroom where the fee schedule for abuse is displayed like tax brackets. That's what this became. Behind the scenes, clerks created a paper universe documenting every horror. In sealed archives beneath the Palatine, files were organized with chilling precision. Name, age, social rank, description, services performed, duration, degree of cooperation, pregnancies, miscarriages, injuries, medical interventions, fees paid, guards assigned, midwives present. The emperor had invented a kind of dark census, not of citizens to be protected, but of bodies to be used. To hold this system together, he needed more than fear. He needed law. Rome's Senate wasn't just bullied, it was enlisted. Carefully worded statutes were passed, declaring the emperor's body sacred, framing any union with him as a form of religious worship. What should have been described bluntly as assault was rebranded as divine service. Contracts were drawn up, and parents, especially fathers, were pressured to sign them, formally consenting to the involvement of their wives and daughters. One senator, Cornelius, finally refused when ordered to give up his wife, Livia. In a rare moment of public courage, he stood in the Senate and said no. The next morning, his 8-year-old son was found on the Senate steps, mutilated but alive. The boy's body carved with a message no father could misunderstand. That afternoon, Cornelius delivered his wife to the palace. Later, when she conceived, he was forced to recognize the child as his legitimate heir by imperial decree, while his other children were rendered irrelevant. Soon after, the Senate voted that any child of the emperor, however conceived, outranked the lawful sons of other men. At that point, the justice system wasn't just broken, it had been inverted. Law became the language of humiliation, and running this required an entire shadow bureaucracy that looked suspiciously like an ordinary administration. There were officials in charge of ritual clothing, scribes who managed registers, accountants who balanced the books, guards who escorted victims according to strict timetables, official midwives who attended forced births. Everyone had a role, and because responsibility was scattered, no one had to face themselves as the single architect of the horror. If there's one thing that keeps a system of torture going, it's profit. An entire economy grew around Caligula's apparatus. Vendors sold ointments and salves advertised to heal injuries. Underground physicians provided abortions. Doctors specialized in reconstruction. Tutors taught victims how to display convincing obedience to avoid worse punishments. Priests blessed unions everybody knew were forced. Poets wrote verses turning public cruelty into mythic, almost heroic narratives. By the time the machine was running at full capacity, almost every social class was involved, either benefiting from it, pretending not to see it, or being crushed by it. That's one of the darkest truths of judicial torture. Once it's normalized, society doesn't just allow it. Parts of society learn to depend on it. There were nights when the cruelty was turned into pure spectacle. Under the full moon, Caligula staged fertility rites in a private amphitheater transformed into a fake temple. Gladiators, foreign captives, and sometimes even animals were thrown into orchestrated scenes with selected women, all mapped out by the emperor using a gilded baton. Husbands watched from the stands in their official robes, forced to keep their faces neutral while their families were degraded in front of them. Scribes recorded everything. Nothing was left undocumented. And through it all, the victims' bodies told a story the official records would never fully admit. Scars formed a private alphabet of trauma no one wanted to read. Pregnancies appeared, barely acknowledged. Some women tried to vanish behind extra layers of clothing. Smiles stopped coming. The muscles of joy literally weakened from lack of use. One young woman, Valeria, stopped speaking entirely after months inside the system. Doctors checked her and found nothing wrong with her throat. There was nothing physically stopping her voice. She had just lost the language to describe what had happened to her. That's another feature of judicial torture. It doesn't just break the body, it breaks narrative. It makes people doubt there's any way to tell their story that will be believed, understood, or allowed. Some tried to resist directly. A few women stole poison and tried to end their lives before being summoned again. Others cut or burned their own faces, hoping that disfigurement would make them unusable. But the medical arm of the system was too efficient. Many were revived, patched up, and sent back into the cycle, sometimes punished more harshly for daring to try escape. Caligula even twisted disfigurement into another ritual, arguing that ugliness could make acts feel more pure because they were less about desire and more about devotion. There was no exit, no exile, no safe distance. Rome itself had become a courtroom where the verdict was always, "You belong to the emperor." Eventually, the blade that the system sharpened turned on its own creator. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite protectors, weren't just passively guarding doors. They participated, enforced, and benefited. But one officer, Cassius Chaerea, took humiliation personally. Caligula had mocked his voice, forced him into degrading tasks, chipped away at his dignity piece by piece. That anger didn't make him a hero, but it did make him dangerous. On January 24th, 41 CE, after a particularly brutal ceremony in which senators' wives were treated like auction property before gladiators, Caligula walked through an underground passage on his way to another event. Chaerea and other conspirators ambushed him. They stabbed him dozens of times, even targeting his genitals in a deliberate symbolic reversal of his abuses. His wife and young daughter were murdered soon after. The conspirators wanted not just a man dead, but a bloodline erased. But here is the most unsettling part. Killing the emperor didn't kill the system. The new ruler, Claudius, ordered a damnatio memoriae, an official erasure of Caligula's memory. Statues were dragged down, inscriptions were hacked away, coins with his face were melted. Official documents avoided his name. Rome tried to convince itself that the nightmare had simply been a bad chapter they could edit out of the record. Yet the ledgers survived, the habits survived, the legal precedents survived. Children born under the breeding programs grew up without knowing their true origins. Women carried unspoken memories into old age. Fathers who once signed documents, held torches in ceremonies, or stood silent in the Senate never fully escaped what they had done, or failed to do. The machinery Caligula built had written something into Rome's institutional DNA. The idea that if you wrap cruelty in procedure, if you give it a legal framework and a ceremonial script, then almost anything can be justified. And that is the true face of judicial torture. It's not just the physical act of harm, it's the system that teaches everyone around it how to rationalize that harm as necessary, holy, or lawful. It turns the courtroom into a stage, the judge into a ringmaster, and the law into a script where victims are always cast in the same role: silent, disbelieved, or expendable. What makes this story more than ancient history is how familiar its patterns feel. The language of public order, security, sacred duty, and national interest has often been used to justify extraordinary abuses. Files are kept, codes are written, memos circulate, decisions are stamped and archived, and by the time the public glimpses what's happening, it's already legal, already procedure, already too complicated to understand. The lesson hidden inside Caligula's palace is brutally clear. When law stops limiting power and starts decorating it, when courts become theaters and records become shields, torture doesn't disappear. It just swaps the dungeon for a desk. If you want to keep exploring the darkest corners where power and cruelty meet, from Roman palaces to modern prisons and secret courts, stay with this channel. There are more stories hidden in archives, forgotten testimonies, and sanitized reports that need to be dragged back into the light. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who still believes that legal always means just. And in the comments, say one thing. After hearing this, what scares you more, the monsters who enjoy torture or the systems that quietly make room for them?